Could you convict if you don't believe a drug-dealing, convicted criminal, even with a violent past? And second, could you convict even if you didn't believe the motive? Words that will come out of Alexander Bradley's mouth. Could you still convict? And then finally, could you convict if there is no forensic evidence directing Aaron Hernandez to this crime? And I'm about to tell you why those three questions were so important, and why those three questions were posed to you individually before you could sit in your chairs here today. Now, before I do that, I have got to answer the one question that is burning in everyone's mind in this room, perhaps even in this town, and perhaps many across the country. And that is, how could he throw it all away? He had everything. He had all these opportunities. What went wrong? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the simple answer to that is that Aaron Hernandez made terrible choices as to who he decided to associate himself with, who he decided to have around in his inner circle. My mother used to tell me, lie down with crap, you're going to come up stinking. Only she didn't use the word crap. Now, Alexander Bradley is not just a drug dealer. He's a legitimate drug trafficker. Dealing drugs is a violent, dangerous business. And sometimes Alexander Bradley is also known as charade and rock. Has to step on toes, strong arm, and show a little muscle. No one, I mean no one, crosses charade. A man like this is to be respected. A man like this is to be feared. And everyone who knew charade feared him. Now, when you look at this case, people will say Aaron and Bradley just didn't mix. Well, they had a mutually beneficial relationship. And that is because Aaron bought marijuana from Sherrod. In fact, he did so quite often. And that's how the relationship started. It was a professional relationship, according to Sherrod Bradley. And Aaron used, we're not going to hide that, Aaron used marijuana. He's not charged with any crimes of marijuana, and you're certainly not to consider that. You're going to hear all different types of evidence of some questionable behavior. But we ask that you stay focused at the crimes that are charged, and only those. And so will the judge so instruct you. They had a mutually beneficial relationship. Aaron bought marijuana from him, and he sometimes smoked it frequently for various reasons. One, he liked to get high. He liked the recreational purpose of it. But two, many football players in the NFL smoke marijuana. It helps them heal a lot faster for next Sunday. And you may hear, if necessary, we may put on evidence of that to show you that that is something that's commonplace in the NFL. Now, having said that, Bradley served another purpose. While Aaron Hernandez made a good living, he was still making the league minimum at the time of this incident, which means he wasn't Floyd Mayweather carrying around a large entourage. He had to rely on those close to him to protect him from people perhaps harassing him, people trying to take advantage, and sometimes just to be left alone when someone wants to go out to eat or go out for a drink. Many people want to talk about the Super Bowl. Many people want to perhaps take photos or harass them or blame them for dropping a pass, different things like that. Bradley served that purpose. Bradley was a big guy. No one messed with Sherrod. And Sherrod was able to keep people at a distance when it relates to Aaron. It's another thing. Sherrod didn't need Aaron's money. Sherrod made his own money. You'll hear evidence that he moved anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds of marijuana a month. As I said, this is a serious drug trafficker. But Sherrod liked the athlete life. He liked to be a baller. He's a big guy, not as big as Aaron, but he's close. Sometimes they would all go out. He'd go out with other players, like Rob Gronkowski, Brandon Spikes. They'd go to club. Bradley loved the way the women flocked to the athletes. Bradley loved the attention, the VIP life. So it was a mutually beneficial relationship. Were they best friends? They were close at times, not so much at others. Only really been to with each other or a couple of years, but they were introduced from a mutual friend back in the old neighborhood in Bristol. Okay. Now, Mr. Hagan discussed about he was going to be his godfather. I can assure you that Alexander Sherrod Bradley was not in any church attempting or even considering to be the godfather of Aaron's child. It just doesn't, it's just not true. Now, when you see this case unfold, we really have to dig into the actual evidence. And that's what I want to focus on. And there were quite a few things that were not mentioned during my colleague's opening statement. A significant amount of things. And that's going to take us back to their three original questions. Could you convict if you don't believe Bradley? Could you convict if you don't have any direct evidence, forensics, tying Aaron to this crime? Could you convict if you don't believe the motive given to you by Alexander Bradley? I want to dive straight to that night. On that evening, you will see immediately that Aaron and Bradley show up, then they walk around a different area and go to the 7-Eleven. You'll see in the video Aaron holding a bottle of water. They went and bought a couple of things, some gum at 7-Eleven. Then you'll see them briefly in the video crossing the street to Cure. Now, what's fascinating at this point is you have to see the immediate interaction. Once you see Daniel De Abreu, you'll notice him, he's the gentleman with braids. As he walks by, Bradley walks by, and you can immediately see that De Abreu recognizes Bradley. He looks to his right to see if Bradley notices him, and then he looks down. Almost turns away. You then see at some point Bradley pointing in the direction of De Abreu. At that point, everyone goes into the club. You don't see anything that's outside of the commonplace of whatever could be noticed on the video. Now, Mr. Hagan wanted to bring up about these two worlds. Yes, they did live in two worlds. There's nothing wrong with that. That's our country. We live in a capitalist system. There are people who work hard, and some people succeed, others do not. And that shouldn't be held against someone. I can assure you, no one gave Aaron Hernandez anything. As a child, his father pushed him in sports. While other kids were playing video games and hanging out and having sleepovers, he was running more laps. He was catching more passes. He was doing everything his father told him to do so that one day he could realize his dream and be a professional athlete. Then when he goes to college, he's on the field 10, 14 hours a day, putting his current and his future health at risk so we can all cheer about this game that they play. Yes, I can assure you, no one gave him anything. Whatever Aaron Hernandez got as a result of his hard work, he earned. And it should not be used against him in any way, shape, or form, because he succeeded in that regard, because he worked hard. They walk into the club, and there's one name that fell deathly silent during Mr. Hagan's opening statement, and that is the name of Jamie Furtado. Now, we're going to show you that they were in the nightclub for only 9 minutes, not 10. You'll see exactly down to the second when the camera loses focus of Aaron going in and coming out. In that 9 minutes, the state would have you believe that someone so recognizable as Aaron Hernandez. Now let's face it, Aaron Hernandez is not the most popular patriot in this town. Of course, that distinction would go to Tom Brady. But he's quite recognizable. There are only approximately 3 to 7% football players that are of Hispanic descent. He clearly stands out. Now, he goes in this nightclub, and not a single person notices any type of altercation or any incident whatsoever. That's a fact. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Not only did any patrons or any employees not see a single thing, the 3 men that were with Daniel De Abreu and Sofia Furtado didn't see anything either. They're going to come and tell you they had no problems with anyone. And you would think that if any interaction happened, that somebody, some soul, may have seen it. But that's not the case. Now we get down to the actual timeline. And the timeline is clear in this case. And that is because of Jamie Furtado. He works security at Cure. He will tell you that he saw Aaron come down, and then basically as you see everyone coming down, it might look like they're together because they're entering at the same time. Cure is underground, so they go down the stairs. And it could appear to any observer that all these gentlemen are together, but they were not. Jamie Furtado will tell you that he saw Aaron because he stands out. He's a big guy. Not only big in height, but also broad-shouldered, pretty big guy. He saw at that time Aaron walk away towards the bar. He walks away, clearly not interacting with these other individuals. Not only that, you'll see a possible receipt that I think De Abreu or Furtado didn't buy a drink until several minutes later. At some point, just a few minutes later, almost 10 minutes, which is right around the time that they leave, Aaron walks up to Jamie Furtado, and another individual is with Aaron. It's a fan. He wants his picture taken with Aaron Hernandez. Sometimes it's not good for a celebrity or an athlete to take too many pictures in bars and nightclubs. It gives the wrong image. Doesn't look good if you go on social media and all you do is see partying, 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 partying. So many athletes and celebrities want to take pictures away, a little bit to the side. Not only that, it also discourages other people from coming around and asking for pictures and pictures. And then you're not even having a good time anymore. So what happens is, he walks up to Jamie and says, "Hey, can you take a picture for the fan for me?" And Jamie says, "Yes." Jamie Furtado takes a photograph of Aaron Hernandez and this other individual, this fan. Now, as Mr. Hagan said, it's a Sunday night. Not a lot happening in this town on a Sunday night. Maybe 30 to 50 people max at the bar, at this nightclub. They scan every individual's ID that comes through the door. Not only that, there's video of everyone who comes through the door. Do you think, knowing this important information, knowing how crucial this is to everyone, not only to the life of Aaron Hernandez, but to the victims in this case, that maybe the police would say, you know what? We should try and track down who that fan was and see that picture. Why? Because if there's a spilt drink all over Aaron, we'll be able to use that in this case. But nothing could be more simpler. People have to put their driver's license to get in the club on video. Not only that, you also have the video of the people coming in. They don't do that. And there's a reason for that. And that's because Jamie Furtado will tell you, as soon as they took that picture, he left. Aaron left the bar. We know that because they were only in the bar 9 minutes. So not only do you have 0 witnesses, you have 0 probability of this happening. And then it gets even stranger at that point. You may not be ready for this, but there is absolutely no video of the nightclub downstairs. If any situation is going on down there, a fight breaks out, someone gets stabbed, someone gets shot, someone falls down the stairs, there's nothing to record it. Now, mind you, There are numerous cameras up there, and they're all being recorded. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will find out that that video mysteriously disappeared. They didn't go looking for a picture, and they didn't go looking for this video. You will hear this going on when it comes to the video. The police will say, yes, we asked for both the inside and the outside of the Cure videos. The nightclub will give you a different story. They will say, no, no, no. They only asked for the outside only. They didn't ask for any inside cameras. And then there's no real tracking of evidence as it relates to this crucial piece of information. This crucial evidence. You will see throughout this trial that crime scene techs will go through great detail to document and collect certain pieces of evidence. But the one piece of evidence, the main piece of evidence that would give you the whole why as to why this whole thing happened, is missing. It's disappeared. And you can only conclude one of two things. Either the police saw what was on it at some point, and didn't like it, because it probably showed zero interaction with Aaron and these individuals. Then what are you going to do? You're not going to believe the motive. You're not going to believe that one question that you were, each and every single one of you were asked. Could you convict, even if you don't believe the motive? The other reason is the nightclub could have made this whole thing disappear. Ladies and gentlemen, this did not happen over a spilled drink. This happened over a drug deal. Alexander Bradley had issues with Daniel De Abreu, and that's why we're all sitting here today. If there is drug dealing going on in that nightclub, can you imagine the lawsuit that's being exposed, that they're exposed to? Can you imagine how quick they would get shut down? They would get shut down immediately. No questions asked. Once that happens, they're at significant risk. So, ladies and gentlemen, you will not have the one piece of evidence, which clearly, this in and of itself, is enough to give you a reasonable doubt. And this case is over. But you don't even need that video because you have Jamie Furtado's testimony, who does not even know Aaron Hernandez, works for Cure, and will tell you, I took a picture of him. And not only did I take a picture of him, he left right after that. Now, when he left, you will see something. Aaron is not upset. He's calm. In fact, at one point, he's going through his phone, not looking like he's going to just finish wanting to kill someone. You know what? I think I'm going to kill someone in a couple of hours. He also has 2 drinks in his hand. One that's his drink, and one that Bradley's, and also Bradley's drink. And that's because Bradley's doing anything but drinking in that nightclub. And you're going to see on the video Aaron chugging both drinks before they walk out the door. Chugging them. And also you're going to see that he has zero moisture on any of his clothing. You'll be able, while it's black and white, and I guess it's not color, but it's not black and white, it's somewhere in the middle. But you'll clearly see that he has absolutely nothing on his clothing. He's dry. The state is going to want you to believe. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? That's what they're going to ask you to do in this case. Believe them over your lying eyes. And then as you see them exiting the club, now again, none of this makes any sense. Daniel De Abreu is 5'7" tall. Stand up there. If Aaron has a beef with some, I'm 5'8". If Aaron has a beef with someone who's 5'7" tall, he doesn't have to go and get a gun to set him straight. If he's being tried by someone who's 5'7" tall, he doesn't have to wait 2 hours to make due on it. If he's such a hothead, that's ridiculous. It's absurd, and it doesn't pass the laugh test. This is no laughing matter, because despite all of this, despite that the fact that the video is missing, despite Jamie Furtado, Aaron sits here as a citizen accused of murder. You saw how in the beginning, Mr. Sheehan reading charge after charge after charge after charge. And by the end of this case, you're going to see just how scary it is, because it's so easy to accuse someone like this. And just how you really don't need any evidence, because you can get an experienced prosecutor to come up here and tell a marvelous story. Doesn't have to back it up with any evidence, though. But that's where you come in. Despite that you were asked those 3 questions as to could you convict, even though we have a drug-dealing liar up here. Could you convict, even though you don't believe the motive? Because we know that that is going to get shot down completely. Could you convict if there's no science to show you that there's no evidence where it should be? No evidence where it should be. Now, we're going to be highly critical, it's true, of this investigation. And I want you to know something. Some of the evidence that will come out about this investigation will be outright intentional misconduct by law enforcement. And some of it will be simple negligence. But if you're sitting in this chair, accused of murder, it doesn't make a difference. The effect is still the same. The one piece of evidence that could exonerate you was either neglectfully done or intentionally destroyed. Just like that video. It doesn't make a difference whether Cure had any reason to get rid of it, or police didn't take proper steps to collect it. The effect is still the same. It's gone. It's gone forever. And the one that it hurts most is Aaron. And if it could happen to him, someone so recognizable, it's a scary thought. It's an incredibly scary thought. And it doesn't matter what resources you have, where you come from, whether you're black or white. It doesn't matter to any of those things. It's all about justice. And what your verdict must show is justice in our search for the truth. And that's where we're going. We're going on a search for the truth to get through the noise and actually hear some of this evidence. Now, one of the things that you will hear as it relates to forensics, it's true when you were qualified, there is no science that will connect Aaron Hernandez to this case. Absolutely none. No fingerprints, no DNA, no gunshot residue, different things that police looked for and didn't find. But what you do have is you will have Bradley's story, an unbelievable, fantastic tale of lies. Bradley will tell you that as they were driving, he's the driver. Now this is one important fact. Alexander, it is not contested, nor will it ever be contested, that the person driving that vehicle that night was Alexander Bradley. It's uncontested. He will tell you that as they were at a red light beforehand, he gunned it and ran the red light to the other to catch up to the BMW. He will then tell you that Aaron, as big as he is, reached over from the passenger side and stuck his whole body out the window and started to shoot with fantastic accuracy, as Mr. Hagan pointed out. And then another story, he will tell you, no, he actually only had his arm out the window. His stories will fluctuate depending on the mood of the day. What he will testify up here to is anyone's guess. But he then says, because the cops start to question this, well, wait a minute, how does a big guy like this reach across, and you're a big guy, between you and the steering wheel, and get his whole body outside the window? Well, I used the seat to pull it back. So you will see some reenactments. I guess the police think they can go into a time machine and try to recreate this fantastic tale. They don't do one, but they do two. The reason they do two is because they're not even sure which story Bradley's going to testify to. Well, we will be able to show you that both of them are outright lies. Picture this, if you will. And one of the things that Bradley forgot to mention is that the car has one of the electric seats that go back. So he guns it, catches up to the BMW, and then says, wait a minute. All right, go ahead, shoot. It's outrageous. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And what we did is we got one of the finest forensic pathologists to come for you and tell you and explain and do an actual forensic reconstruction of what Bradley claims happened. And you will hear that this fantastic tale is just that. What we did is we took it from the inside out. He used science by looking at the x-rays and the actual wounds and is able to tell the directionality of the bullets and give you some idea of the trajectory and show you that this story not only doesn't make sense, it's outright crazy. That's an insignificant detail to the state. You see, they've got themselves the fallen patriot. In front of the bright lights and all the cameras, the district attorney of Suffolk County stood up and announced to the world that they have now indicted the fallen patriot, Aaron Hernandez. And that's what it's all about. A notch on your belt. Being able to say, well, we've got this high-profile case, and we won this case, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter, the evidence. So you have now this forensic evidence that clearly shows that this did not happen the way Bradley says it did. It takes you to the actual investigation. And the investigation is, I've saved really the absolute worst. It is corrupted from its inception. Immediately upon the police being called in this case, EMT does something incredibly stupid. They place sheets where no one knows where they came from over the bodies, thereby contaminating these bodies. Any trace evidence that could be possibly recovered from them is gone. And if that wasn't stupid enough, they then allow a street sweeper to go by the crime scene. I didn't misspeak. A street sweeper came and swept up much of the evidence. Now, Dr. Downs will tell you one other thing about the reconstruction, the forensic reconstruction that's based on science. The injuries that were suffered by Safiro Furtado indicates one thing, and that is that he had his arm raised in a certain direction, in a way that is consistent with perhaps shooting a gun. This street sweeper, if there was another gun and if it was fired, that evidence is also gone forever. You won't have that to consider. That has been denied to you. One of the other things that you'll see is after the street sweeper goes by, the only two people who did not get shot by Alexander Bradley fled the scene. They left. They didn't stick around for the police to come and start asking questions. They took off. So whatever they had with them, or whatever was in that car, is gone forever too. Bless you. Now, you'll hear something as well. Mr. Sanchez, who was in the car, claims that he was actually there while the scene was being processed, covered in blood. Covered in blood, and he was just staying back watching, right there behind the crime scene tape. He wants you to believe, or the state would like for you to believe, that out of the 22 police officers who were there that night, processing the scene, canvassing the area, looking for witnesses, that not a single one of them went up to Mr. Sanchez and said, "Hey, buddy, are you okay? How'd you get that blood on you? Are you from Cape Verde? These guys are from Cape Verde. I don't know, I'm no detective, but maybe you were in the car." something as ridiculous as this is what you're going to be asked to believe in this case. Issue after issue after issue after issue. When in fact what it is reasonable doubt after reasonable doubt after reasonable doubt after reasonable doubt. All of these things come into play. And as it relates to the crime scene, I left the absolute worst for last. And that is the desecration of the bodies of Daniel De Abreu and Safiro Furtado. You will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that the crime scene officers there, that Detective Sullivan made a decision. He made a call that he was not going to process the crime scene there. He was not going to review the bodies there, take photographs of them, try and see if they collect all the bullets, all the projectiles. Mind you, we disagree. There were 6 shots fired, not 5, as the state will say. And Dr. Downs is going to come here and show you why. With forensics, not testimony. The gun is a 6-shooter. Mr. Hagan wants you to believe there were only 5 shots fired, and that he just kept clicking. Nonsense. We're going to bring you science. We're going to show you where those bullets went and how. When I say the desecration of these bodies, is that these 2 men were treated so disrespectfully that it forever lost evidence, and not a single citizen should ever be processed this way. They threw sheets over the bodies, and then they put the car on a tow truck and drove it to headquarters. If you're going to work on Monday morning, downtown Boston, and you see a car being towed with dead bodies in it, that's Boston's finest for you. Now, what possible explanation they're going to give you for this? They're going to tell you that they needed a search warrant to process the crime scene. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. Here's what we think your only conclusion will be. We can't read minds, but I can tell you this. They didn't need a search warrant to process a crime scene. They needed a search warrant to search that car. And the reason they asked for a search warrant is because they thought they were going to get drugs or money in the trunk of that car. And that's why they did what they did, despite the fact that they would lose evidence lost forever. The simplest of things were not done. There was only one window up that evening, which again leads you to believe something was going on with the windows being down. Another thing you'll see when you see the video is that the BMW, when it comes out of the garage, waits a few moments. There's no traffic. And it's not until 6 minutes later that the first 911 call comes in. Something's going on. A critical part about that is you're going to see in the video these shadowy figures just before the BMW comes out. The state, in this case, cannot even show you that Aaron was actually in the car because they have another witness whose name is Ugo I'm butchering his name, Ojimba, will tell you right around 2:25 when he's exiting Club Cure, a few moments later, he sees Aaron Hernandez, who he recognizes from football, near the W Hotel across the street, right around the exact time that these shadowy figures are outside the Tufts garage where the BMW is and where the other individuals are waiting to go into the BMW. That's going to be more doubt for you to consider. Now, here's the thing though. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter because in the state of Massachusetts, mere presence at a crime does not make you guilty. You can even know that a crime is about to be committed.
Counsel,
nothing to stop it.
I will instruct in the law, please.
Yes, sir. The judge will instruct you on what the law is of mere presence. And he will tell you exactly what to consider when looking at this evidence. But they still have a problem with this other witness who is further down the road. Is there another individual? Well, the eyewitnesses will tell you that in the passenger seat was someone, either a male or female, with cornrows, with braids. I don't care how you slice it. Aaron Hernandez's hairstyle today and on the day of this incident looks nothing like long hair with beads and cornrows. The only independent witnesses that you will hear from will tell you that. And these are two gentlemen who were in another car, and the SUV pulled up right next to them. And in fact, one witness was just feet away, just a couple of feet away, and will tell you he saw an African American male or Hispanic, dark-skinned Hispanic, driving. Mr. Hagen told you all that he's a white boy, an American-looking white boy. That's what one of the alleged victims will say, not what the independent witnesses will say. And not only that, he failed to mention this specific witness always called Daniel De Abreu white boy. That was his nickname because it was lighter skin. You're going to see Alexander Sherrod Bradley is very light skinned. He's a light skinned African American male. He may be, many people might describe him as Hispanic looking. He's very light skinned. In fact, one of the gentlemen who found him in West Palm Beach when he didn't want to cooperate with the police will testify that he thought he was white. Here he is having significant interaction with this man, face to face, trying to save his life, and he thinks he's white. So you're going to see the troubles with some of this evidence as it comes in. But one thing's clear. Another person is being described, and another witness will tell you that he saw Aaron further down the road when this whole thing, when there's some shadowy figures further on down on the Tufts camera. You're not going to be able to see or identify anyone, just see two shadowy figures. Now, one of the other things that I failed to mention, the specific things that were not done at the crime scene that would have assisted you, is when a bullet goes through glass, you may have noticed at times if you see a broken auto glass that it cracks into little itsy bitsy pieces. It doesn't break out into big pieces, and that's for safety reasons. But what competent law enforcement do is they collect the glass, and when you do that, you can tell how many shots went through that window and which ones happened first and second. It gives you a distinct pattern. That evidence is gone forever. Not for you to consider because it wasn't necessary. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see a tale of two investigations in this case. One, when they thought they had just two dead black guys on the side of the road. And one, when they thought they had an NFL football player. They did nothing, next to nothing, to try and follow up anything on this investigation. And that's why it went cold. Next to nothing. Once they found out that they had an NFL football player in their nets, it was all in. You're also going to see that they did very little to investigate Alexander Bradley. That third person, you think maybe they get you Alexander Bradley's phone records? Remember Mr. Hagen talking about how they're going to go through all of Aaron's phones and text messages? Bradley, being a drug dealer, carried two phones, and they don't collect a single one. They don't get his records at all. Later on, they do a document dump, but at the time of this incident, or when all of this first comes to light, and even in West Palm Beach, you're going to see a gross difference in what they did to try and tie Aaron to this case, which is great, because as much as they did, they still don't have a single piece of direct evidence that links Aaron to this crime. Now, it's true, they made a deal with Bradley. Despite knowing the fact that he's a convicted drug dealer, despite knowing the fact that he sits in jail for a violent gun offense, they still move forward. That's an insignificant detail. We've got an NFL football player. Cameras are here. That's what matters. That's all that matters. So despite all of that, despite the fact that you're going to learn a lot about what he was in jail for, and you remember Mr. Hagan saying, well, he didn't want a deal. He was being nice. It was kind of like speaking out of both ends of his mouth. One minute, he's street. He's all street, all about the code. Not going to say anything to anyone. Then in the other one, about 30 minutes later, he's telling you, well, he came in, he was being very nice. He didn't want anything in return for his testimony, for his proffer. Come on. You're far more intelligent than that, and not a single one of you is going to believe that for a second. He was sitting in jail looking at some serious, significant time for a violent gun offense, and it was time to talk. Why? Because he had a mutual enemy with the Commonwealth. And I'm going to get into that in a moment. Before I do, I want to talk to you about some of the witnesses and how they were questioned in this case, because it's critical. And it's something you all have to consider. You don't have to be a police detective to know when you go and question witnesses, first thing you do is record it. You record it because you don't want someone later on claiming, like the witness, kind of intimidated me. They told me to say certain things. I didn't say that. Things like that. It's Witness 101. When it relates to certain times, what law enforcement do is a little trick they call pre-interviews. And you're going to see that's done a lot in this case, where they'll question a witness, they'll find out what they have to say, and then start questioning them. What this does, this pre-interview purpose, is it then gives the interviewer the ability to steer away from things they don't like. Maybe not ask them certain questions, and only focus in on on certain things. And whatever intimidation went on before, you will never know about. Many of the witnesses in this case were pre-interviewed. Many of them were not even recorded at all. They got tape recorders down at the police station. And if they don't have them there, they've got iPhones and other phones, despite the fact that Aaron was so crazy and didn't want iPhones around him. They have iPhones where they can actually record someone as they're interviewing them. But you're going to find a consistent pattern of misconduct by these cops when they're interviewing and in some occasions, intimidating witnesses all across the United States. Because when you got an NFL football player, money is no object. If you got two possible drug-related killings on the side of the road, who's going to come around and start asking questions? For what? They went to Arizona, Chicago, Florida, New York, California, a couple of times, just to try and find something to connect Aaron to this case. Anything. But what they're relying on, and what you're going to notice, is just what Mr. Hagan did here today before you. And that is try to make you discriminate and hate him. It doesn't matter what the evidence is. They're going to paint him as a tough guy, a hothead, a privileged celebrity. He said that with disdain, as you all heard of him. Well, there's two different worlds. You know, he's the lucky guy. He gets to do whatever he wants. Lives the VIP life. You should hate him for that. So the second that someone takes this stand, you're already discriminating against them for that purpose and ignoring the evidence, the lack of evidence, or the conflict in the evidence that you're going to hear. Now, I want to talk to you briefly about this gun. There's some funky things going on with this gun. And I'll tell you this. You will first hear how they came about the gun. Starting with the gun, I know that thing is annoying. Trust me, it's harder for me to concentrate and talk to you than it is to go through this. You're going to hear, when they first got the ballistic evidence, that there were about 5 different types of guns these bullets could have come from. So later on in the case, they sent out a notice, hey, we're looking for these types of guns. And between here, Massachusetts and Connecticut, what do you think? 3 days after becoming a suspect, they miraculously find Jaylene Diaz Ramos. It's a miracle. The odds are really better in playing the lottery than it is to find this gun. A girl from Bristol gets into a car accident. Well, she gets into the car accident, they confiscate the gun, and out of all the guns confiscated in over a year's time in these 2 state areas, the only gun ever tested for ballistics is this one gun. And what do you know? It's a match. You're going to hear serious challenges to the science in this ballistics. We're going to question that. We're not the only ones questioning it. There are studies that show that ballistic evidence is really more of an opinion. And whose opinion is it? A police officer's. A police officer will look under a microscope and tell you certain tool mark evidence, whether they're a match or not. But they got problems with this gun. One of them you heard from Mr. Hagan, and that is Bradley tells you that the gun was thrown out the window. And he's certain the gun was thrown out the window. He's also going to tell you that he bought the gun from a guy named Jamar, and that he bought the gun for Aaron. Okay? He's going to tell you he bought a .357 Magnum, not a .38. I can guarantee you, and you're all going to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, that a street-smart drug dealer knows the difference between a .357 Magnum and a .38. This gun that they're going to bring forth to you was made in 1913. It was stolen out of a hardware store in Kentucky. That was before the Great Depression. But yet, someone who has all the toys and lives a comfortable life, the state wants you to believe, is running around with this 1913 gun. There's another problem with the gun. Jaylene Ramos is shown a lineup of different guns. She picks the wrong gun. And she also tells the police that her gun had the serial number scratched out. She also, the other problem is Bradley says that's not the gun. The guy who bought the gun to begin with is going to tell you that's not the gun. He not only says it once to the police, he testifies to that before the grand jury when he's shown the gun. The police are not able to get any fingerprints off of this gun. That's tie Aaron to this. Aaron's fingerprints are nowhere near this gun. The police also are unable to get any DNA from the gun. The defense had it tested. We had it tested, and when we tested it, not only is Aaron's DNA not on that gun, we found other profiles, but also Jaylene's DNA is not on that gun. The defense is picking up the pieces where the police and the state have dropped the ball. For example, defense went to inspect the evidence. Remember when I mentioned to you Safiro Furtado's arm being extended? The lawyers went and inspected the evidence. We photographed it. And you'll hear evidence that it was discovered at that evidence inspection, a separate hole in the shirt of Safiro Furtado, a bullet hole that was completely missed. Completely missed during the autopsy. Completely missed, period. How does this happen? How do you flop an investigation so easily? It's easy when you don't care about the victims. It's easy when you don't care about this case. But when you have someone in your grasp that you really want, that's when the investigation gets turned up. It gets turned up significantly. Now that takes us to West Palm Beach. What you will realize, and what you probably already know because of your past experiences, that to a drug dealer, South Florida is Candyland. It's like a kid in a candy store. And Bradley had been to Florida numerous times. He had been a couple times with Aaron. He had been a couple times on his own. What happened in West Palm Beach, Florida, is that they went to block parties, and they went, it's true, Deontay Thompson had a Super Bowl party to celebrate the Super Bowl. And then at that time, Aaron introduced Bradley, and had previously as well introduced him to some of his friends that he went to college with, and their friends introduced him to people, and so on and so on. And there were some unsavory characters there. And Bradley went down and actually did a drug deal. You'll hear evidence, of course, ladies and gentlemen, that it is not like Bradley will testify to, that there were far more guys that went to the strip club that night. And you will see evidence that the location of this incident was past their hotel room, further north. And you will see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that that's why Bradley got shot. He was shot in a secluded warehouse area. Now, Bradley wants you to say, well, he fell asleep and didn't go through certain areas. And the evidence that he will testify to, the things that he will tell you, are not consistent with that of the crime scene. Let's not even get into the fact that he lied to the police. And that's what the state wants you. The government's coming here and asking you, look, just so he lies to the police doesn't matter. Believe him now. He's lying about this shooting. He clearly lies and says, when they ask him initially, who shot you? He says, some black guy shot me. Not Aaron Hernandez. Not some guys that were with Aaron and me. He says some black guy shot me, and maybe some Hispanics. He doesn't say I know who shot me. Later on, you'll hear evidence of I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to cooperate with you. Now, what you will notice with the West Palm Beach crime scene is that it is a physical impossibility. He was shot by a semi-automatic pistol. What happens with the bullets when you shoot a semi-automatic pistol, the casings get spit out of the gun. He claims he was shot in a car. There's no car. He's not cooperating with the investigation, so the police will never be able to find this car because of Bradley's own doing. You'll hear evidence then that he had a hat on. This hat shows blood pattern evidence that will conclude that he had the hat on when he was shot. The hat is outside of the car, near a fence. What else is there? The bullet, the casing, rather, of the bullet. He's shot in a car, but yet somehow the shell casing ends up where the hat is outside of the car. There's also blood evidence. There's a fence there and there's some PVC pipes. And you could see blood evidence that is spattered across the fence to where these pipes are. Completely inconsistent with that of being shot in the car. What you will hear is that despite being shot, nearly lost his life, Bradley gets up. When the first person who called 911 comes around, they don't see Bradley. He's walking somewhere. He walked away. He's somewhere hidden. And then they come back later on and they see him walking down an alley. And once he sees the individuals who called 911, he collapses and falls down. And at that moment, he's not talking to the cops. He's not talking to anyone. He doesn't want anyone to know what happened. Why? Because he's out there dealing drugs. And you don't go snitching on any drug dealers. Especially ones who are ready to kill you at a moment's notice for little to no money at all. Well, let's face it, with what Bradley deals, we're not talking about little money here. Bradley is now pissed at Aaron, introducing him to these guys who ended up trying to kill him. Bradley has a new enemy. And that's where it goes down between Bradley and Aaron. It's true, the car, early on, if it's used in a shooting, the last thing Aaron wants is for this car to be driving around town. So yes, the car was in the garage. But Bradley will testify and tell you, or he has in the past, I don't know if he'll tell the truth today, that he drove that car after the shooting. Another thing you're going to hear, another significant lie, you may recall Mr. Hagan saying that when they left the bar, that they went to another nightclub. It's true, Aaron went to another nightclub. And you're going to see, as you look at this video, moments where, when they come out of the nightclub, Aaron recognizes and knows Bradley's dealing. Bradley's up to something. Bradley's not happy. And as soon as they come out of the club, you'll see Aaron gesturing in a certain way. And he's telling them, don't involve me in your shit. And as they're walking, you'll see the videotape. And the one that you will see aggressive, the one you will see angry and making gestures and doing all sorts of aggressive activity is Bradley. He wants to go back into that nightclub. There's something there for him, and he needs to go get it. At one point in the video, you're going to see Aaron literally trying to walk across the street by himself. He's like, oh, look, if you're not coming, I'm going by myself. And Bradley stays there. Mr. Hagan told you that Aaron convinced himself in his mind that Daniel De Abreu and Safiro Furtado and that group went to the other bar and followed them and were laughing at him. That's absurd. And the video evidence, beyond any reasonable doubt, will show you that those gentlemen never left the club. They never went across the street. That's an insignificant detail to the state because they made a deal with this drug-dealing killer. Lie after lie after lie. Not only will they have to cover that lie up, they'll have to cover up the lie about the drink. They'll also have to cover up the lie about the gun being thrown out the window, about the absurdity of the shooting. All of these different lies, they just have to look the other way and hope you do the same if you discriminate against this celebrity athlete who lives in a different world. He's not one of us. He's not one of us hard-working people. He lives the good life, but you gotta hate him for it. Despite all of these lies. And that's what this case is gonna boil down to, ladies and gentlemen. There's zero evidence that you will hear about any shooting involved with Aaron. They want you to take supposition upon supposition, guess upon guess, leap upon leap, to reach the conclusion that Aaron shot Daniel De Abreu and Safiro Furtado. Despite the fact that you've got this dangerous drug-dealing killer out there. It's true, this man has 9 lives. He survived several shootings. He survived the one in West Palm Beach. He's also survived this case. He got a free pass. He got another shot at life. He's getting out. He's getting out real soon. Compliments of the state of Massachusetts. Because these cameras are much more important. That notch on their belt is much more important than actual evidence and actual facts. And at the end of the day, I want to conclude with this, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of the day, when this case is over, they are going to ask you, once they put on a convicted drug dealer and violent man on the stand, that his testimony should convince you beyond all reasonable doubt. They don't only have to prove that Aaron committed this crime. They have to prove to you that Bradley didn't. And there's zero way they're going to be able to do that. Zero. And that's the task that you are going to have. But you're going to hear it. You're going to realize it takes a lot of nerve for that man, for them to put that man on the stand and ask you all to believe him beyond a reasonable doubt. When there is zero corroborating evidence to his testimony. There's nothing. No science, no forensics. Remember that question. Would you convict if you don't have any science? Would you do it? Would you do it for us, please? Would you? Not only is there no evidence to support Bradley's story, the lies that he tells time and time again that are provable. It's one thing to say a lie, but something to actually prove it, like the fact that they didn't go to the other nightclub, the gun, all of these other pieces of evidence where he clearly lies to everyone and anyone who suits his purpose. You don't think having his life on the line is worth lying for? At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you each individually and collectively to render a verdict of not guilty, because this is absurd. It's outrageous. And it's very sad what happened to Zafiro Furtado and Daniel De Abreu. And unfortunately, we will not be able to piece together the full picture as much as we could had the police done the right job initially. Had they focused on Bradley as well, had Mr. Sanchez, who was the person filled with blood, went home, he burned his clothes. They never asked Mr. Lopez for his clothes either. There's zero evidence that they did to investigate this case properly. And once you take all of that together, you don't even have to. The missing tape alone, the fact that Bradley's your witness, or I should say their witness, is enough. The fact that they can't prove Bradley didn't shoot Daniel De Abreu and Zafiro Furtado is simply more than enough. Reasonable doubt, where you will have no choice but to conclude that Aaron Hernandez is not guilty, both factually, literally, and legally. Thank you all very much for paying attention.
From your reproach.
Yep.